my first Pokemon, I'll be creating a convergent Delibird with a Grinch personality and aesthetic. So I'll start with its head. I'll give it a Grinch haircut, and I'll give it a fluffy face with 2 big tufts of fur with a mean expression. I'll give it a tall body with brown shorts and a furry coat. And finally, a big round tail that looks like Santa's sack. Now, introducing Delibird, the Glutton Pokemon, from Zealous and Bird, a Ice Dark type with the abilities Frisk, Hustle, and hidden ability Gluttony. Delibird are always given an invitation first when a festival is around the corner. If not invited, and they find out, they will come out of their lair on the eve of the festival to steal all the food, haul it up to the top of the mountain they call their home, and feast to its heart's content. I enjoyed creating this Pokemon. It is an easy and believable convergent Pokemon to create as well. Now, onto my second Pokemon. I'll be designing a gingerbread reindeer Pokemon that is also 2-dimensional. I'll start with its head and body's basic shape. Then I'll add antlers that are also 2-dimensional and slot on top of its head, as well as 2 front legs and 2 back legs that slot beneath its body. Now it's time to decorate this Pokemon with icing and gumdrops. Let's start with its head. I'll give it a gumdrop eye surrounded with icing as an eyelid, as well as a gumdrop nose. For its antlers, I'll line them with icing to look like actual reindeer antlers, as well as some gumdrops because why not? Its neck will also have 4 gumdrops that lead down to its body, with icing spots like that of a fawn. And its body is also topped with icing to simulate snow. And finally, its legs are decorated in a similar manner. Now, introducing Reindeer, the gingerbread Pokemon. From Reindeer and Gingerbread, a normal fairy type with the abilities Sweet Veil, Well-Baked Body, and new hidden ability Brittle, which decreases defense and dramatically increases speed when hit with a physical move. Every winter in a northern town in Galar, known for its bacon, a herd of reindeer head to this location as they enjoy being decorated with sweet treats. Because of this, a traditional competition where anyone can join has formed to decorate reindeer with a variety of baked goods being the prizes. Now onto my next Pokemon. I'll be creating a Krampus-inspired Ent consisting of pine and birch. First, I'll start with its head. I'll give it goat qualities such as horns and demonic qualities like its eyes, as well as mutton chops that look like pine trees. Its body will also have pine fur as well as a hollow stomach, prison made out of birch. Its right arm and left leg will look demonic and will be made out of birch as well. Its right leg and left arm will be made of pine fur, and its left arm will be clasping onto a birch club. Now, introducing Capunish, the dark Ent Pokemon from Caper, the Latin for goat, and Punish, a grass dark type with the abilities Aftermath, Intimidate, and hidden ability Anger Point. Capunish are known for having a sixth sense for bad trainers who mistreat their Pokemon. During the festive season, if it comes across a bad trainer, Capunish will imprison them in its stomach and take them deep into the woods for up to a month after the festive season. This may seem a harsh punishment, but there hasn't been a case where a trainer didn't reform their ways after encountering this Pokemon. This Pokemon is quite dark, but it definitely is something Game Freak would create, as there are some Pokemon with even darker entries. Guillermo, you have been arrested by Capunish for, I quote, eating all the pies. How do you plea? No! Stop screaming. Alright, Capunish, take him to the slammer. Or Weight Watchers. Now, onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be creating a convergent Delmise Pokemon that is a Christmas wreath inhabited by a spirit. I'll start with a golden bow that will act as eyebrows and a moustache. There will be 2 candy canes coming down from the bow, and finally a wreath that rotates anti-clockwise with its pine needles. Now, introducing Misreef, the Carol Pokemon from Mischief and Reef, a ghost normal type with the abilities Soundproof, Prankster, and hidden ability Justified. Misreef like to hang on front doors and wait to hear the songs of carolers. If it enjoys their song, it will give them a sweet peppermint treat for their troubles. However, if Misreef doesn't like a caroler song, they It'll follow them around for the rest of the night, constantly blurring its impression of the characters with distorted tones. You may think its typing is odd, but that is just me trying to keep it on theme. As for Delmise, when I first saw it, it took me a couple of tries to guess its typing. For my first Pokemon, I'll be evolving this Axolotl Pokemon. It comes from an interesting True Green video where the Pokemon has only one stat, and that was Special Defense. Olms look like axolotls and dragons and live in flooded caves. So why don't I create an evolution that is draconic and has spent years training its stats in a cave. First, I'll start with its head. It will have blind eyes with glasses made of water, as well as little whiskers with water-shaped hands covering them. It will also have small shaped horns on the top of its head, shaped like snail shells. The body will be hunched over with stripes going down its back, as well as a spiral going down its tail. I will then add little limbs and wings that have been enveloped in water. Now introducing Olmagod, the old-timer Pokemon from Olm and God, a water dragon type with the abilities Water Absorb, Damp, and the hidden ability Swift Swim. Once a Specialotl reaches a certain point in their life, they will set out in search of a freshwater cave. They will call this their home for the remainder of their life, which can be up to 2 centuries. It is here where they will undergo harsh training, which splits its special defense in half and transfers it over to its special attack. The unique composition of the minerals in its cave it dwells in will determine when it will evolve into Olmagod and how its other stats get boosted. I really enjoyed creating this Pokemon. If it was real, I could see it having a small fan base, but loyal like Drampa. If it was in the anime, I could see it in a retirement home alongside Drampa as well. Now, on to my next Pokemon. I'll be creating an evolution for this tardigrade Pokemon with astronaut attributes. It comes from a video where True Green created Pokemon based on microorganisms. A nickname for tardigrades is the water bear. So why don't I combine a bear with a space shuttle in order to create a evolution for this Pokemon. Firstly, I'll start with its head. It'll be very bear-like and it will look like it's wearing the hood astronauts wear, and its eyes will have crescent moons in it. Its body will contain 6 limbs, 4 of which will be used to hold onto spaceships, while the other 2 will use water propulsion so this Pokemon can move quickly. I'll add wings to the side of its body, as well as a hump to its back where it stores water. Its tail will look like that of a plane, and finally, spheres of water will be around its head and on top of its hump. Now introducing Urstronaut, the space shuttle Pokemon from Ursa and Astronaut, a water flying type with the abilities Cloudline, Damp, and hidden ability Water Veil. Urstronaut were thought to come into existence via the energy given off from evolution. However, it has actually just been evolving from its microscopic pre-evolution. When they evolve, they are startled as their world changes in a drastic way. This Pokemon desires to go to outer space and has discovered it can use its 4 front limbs to attach itself to the hull of a rocket to achieve its goal. Entire squadrons of Urstronaut work together to use their back limbs to achieve escape velocity via water and air propulsion. Once in space, they will have fun racing and battling to their heart's content. Scientists have discovered that the microorganisms living in Urstronaut's water have the ability to survive the vacuum of space. It may result in seeding life on other uninhabited planets. This Pokemon isn't the best in my opinion, but I thought I would submit it anyway as I only had 2 designs at the time of the competition. Now, for my third and final design, I decided to create something just to lengthen this video, as it may be too short. So I thought I'd take one of the competition selection and evolve it subtly like Game Freak. The Pokemon I choose was Hudlif, a Pokemon consisting of stacked stones that look like 2 penguins, which is from True Green's video, If I Laugh, a Pokemon is Born. I want to evolve this Pokemon, subtly like Game Freak, to be the equivalent of Mousehold. By giving this Pokemon a family, I did just that. I gave this Pokemon 3 chicks that look like stacked stones on top of its arms. One that is tired, one that is awake, and one that is sleeping. Now, introducing Collarlif, the Solid Pokemon from Colony and Monolith. A pure rock type with the abilities Friend Guard, Sturdy, and hidden ability Rockhead. Cololith don't change much evolution-wise from their Prevo, other than a change in size. However, this gives it the parental capabilities to look after children. These three chicks have varying personalities which can make or break this Pokemon. During storms, Cololith will unite and stack together to create a fortress to protect their children and Hudlith. I barely changed this Pokemon, but I think it gets across a very niche Game Freak design philosophy. Now, for my first Pokemon, I'm going to be creating a Pokemon for the show Stranger Things. More specifically, the Demogorgon, a creature from the Upside Down that opens up its round head to reveal a beastly mouth. There is a giant red flower known as the Corpse Flower, and it looks like a mouth with teeth in the middle of it. So I'll combine them and start with the head. I'll give it a circular mouth with teeth and surround it with giant blotched petals, all lined with a couple of teeth. The body will be basic, slightly lanky, with an unserious pose, and finally, some bands around its limbs. Now, introducing Demigorps, the Corpse Flower Pokemon from Demogorgon and Corpse, a grass dark type with the abilities Gluttony, Iron Jaw, and hidden ability Speed Boost. Demigorps are hated for their rotten smell, that stinks as much as 5 mucks. They live in rainforests among their own kind, not knowing why others dislike them so much, as they haven't got a sense of smell. If someone upsets a Demigorps, a whole meadow of Demigorps will run around town, leaving it uninhabitable for months. I enjoyed creating this Pokemon a lot. I gave it Speed Boost because I thought it'd be funny and terrifying if this Pokemon got faster and faster while chasing you. Also, I gave it Shiny a Demogorgon-like colouring, and now it looks straight out of Stranger Things. Now, for my second Pokemon, I'll be creating a Pokemon for the show Squid Game. In the first game, there is a robot girl who says green light and red light, and is able to rotate its head 180 degrees. So why don't I combine these to create a traffic light owl? First, I'll start with its traffic light body. Then I'll give it an owl head with yellow eyes, a fringe, and ponytails made of wires. I'll position its wings outwards and give them rings around the feathers, as well as a full ring on both wings. And finally, a couple of your conventional owl-looking legs will be added to the bottom. Now, introducing Gyolpe, the traffic guardian Pokemon from Gyotong and Olpemi, both Korean for traffic and owl. A pure psychic attack with the abilities Keen Eye, Illuminate, and new hidden ability Full Stop, which prevents it getting hit from charge attacks. Gyolpe is known as the Pokemon that has assimilated into human cities and towns the best. It governs traffic by coordinating with other Gyolpe via psychic link. If they sense someone's going to ignore their instructions, they will hijack their mind for a short period of time in order to prevent an accident. I believe this Pokemon to have a great concept. I wish Game Freak would create more Pokemon with a domesticated role, such as Gyolpe. For a shiny, I replaced the green with blue as a reference to Japanese traffic lights. Now, onto my third Pokemon. I'll be basing this Pokemon on the character Wednesday Addams from the show Wednesday. She is a goth girl with a moody disposition and a reanimated hand that follows her around. I wanted to incorporate that into her design, and the first Pokemon that came to mind was Ambipom. So why don't I create a Wednesday variant of Ambipom? I start with a round monkey head, but give it smaller ears and a slight fringe, as well as skull nostrils and a mad expression. As for her body, her arms are crossed, and she has a collar and skirt made of fur. Then I'll give her 2 giant braided hair tails that have hands at the end of them. Now, introducing Wednesday, the goth simian Pokemon from Wednesday and Monkey, a pure dark type with the abilities Technician, Pickup, and hidden ability Skill Link. Wednesday is a very volatile Pokemon due to it being quick to anger, but if you manage to befriend it, you will have a loyal friend. If it sees you get mistreated in any way, it will do everything in its power to exact revenge on the individual that wronged you 1,000-fold. I found this Pokemon hard to create as I found it difficult to draw braided hair, but I managed to somehow. Its shiny is a reference to her best friend, who is very upbeat and likes the colours pink and purple. Now onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be creating a Pokemon based off a character from Umbrella Academy called Klaus. Klaus can talk to the dead, but finds it considerably distressing to his psyche. So why don't I create a little ghost type that is being haunted? I'll start with a round head with worried eyes and a mask. I'll give it smoke emanating from its neck because Klaus is into fashion, so it'll be like a collar of a fur coat. I'll give it a long wispy body, and finally I'll give it a spirit that is latched onto this Pokemon's head based on the ghost from Gen 1. Now introducing Gulaus, the medium Pokemon from Ghoul and Klaus, a pure ghost type with the abilities Insomnia, Levitate, and new hidden ability called Spirit Distress, which prevents it getting hit by ghost type moves, but at the cost of accuracy and evasiveness. Gulaus is employed to help ghost type Pokemon communicate with their trainers. Not with words, but with a Ouija board. However, Gulaus finds this difficult as it is scared of ghost type Pokemon. The only thing that seems to keep this Pokemon going is the spirit clinging to its head that constantly encourages Gulaus. It is a very interesting Pokemon concept wise, but maybe it could use refining, I don't know. The shiny was coloured in a way to look even more ghostly. Now, for my first Pokemon, I'll be redesigning Gothitelle by changing the G into an M so it becomes a Moth Mademoiselle. I'll start by giving it a round head with moth-like hair shape. I'll give the face a happy expression as well as a moth-shaped bow on its head. I'll give it 3 body segments with their own bows as well. Then I'll add some wings. The wings will have a bow pattern on them, and on the lower wing, stripes will be added, and finally I'll give it some moth colouring with orange and brown as well as a bonus pink as it still is a psychic type. Introducing Gothitelle, the moth body Pokemon from Moth and Mademoiselle, a psychic bug type with the abilities Frisk, Competitive and Swarm. Gothitelle are known for being godmothers of bug-type Pokemon. They use their psychic ability to detect when a Pokemon is injured or ill, to take it back to its den to care for them. Although some bug types don't get along, Gothitelle will discipline them until they do. I enjoyed creating this Pokemon. If this Pokemon was real, I'd definitely try it out on my team. Now, onto my next Pokemon. I'll be redesigning Tangrowth as a music-loving Sandgrowth. I'll start by giving it an expression as if it's in the middle of singing. Then I'll give its body the appearance of tangled hair. There'll be hair shaped like different music notes, 4 on the upper body and 2 on the lower body. I'll give it strands of hair that travel across its midsection horizontally to look like sheet music. I'll give it 2 stumpy legs and 2 arms made of hair positioned in a way so it looks like it's projecting its voice. I'll colour its hair brown, but give the music notes green highlights. Now, introducing Sandgrowth, the Sing Squatch Pokemon. From Sang and Growth, a pure normal type with the ability Soundproof and hidden ability Scrappy. Sandgrowth are elusive by nature, and wild ones are heard singing 100 times more than they are physically seen. They are sought after by all sorts of musical professionals for their deep-bassed voice and their hair, which can be used to make unique instruments. I enjoyed making this Pokemon as well, and could see it as a member of one of Ash Ketchum's friends' teams. Now onto my third Pokemon. I'll be replacing the T in Spiritomb with a B, so I'm going to be creating a Spiribomb. I think I'll base it off the sea mine as it then has a lot of direction for a fakemon design. I'll start by creating a circle and then I'll add the prongs of a sea mine. I'll later add stripes to this to both look like a Pokeball and a old school bathing suit. For its face, I'll shape its head like a puddle of water, with sea foam on the outside. Its creepy face will be anchor shaped, and the orbiting spirits are fish shaped. I'll give it some bubbles and shadows for extra detail. Now introducing Spiribomb, the sea mine Pokemon, from Spirit and Bomb, a ghost water type with the abilities Pressure, Water Absorb, and the hidden ability Infiltrator. Spirit Bomb is a spirit that has possessed a specialized oceanic Pokeball capable of capturing multiple Pokemon for a period of time. Only experienced fishermen use Spirit Bomb by commanding it to stay put in the current for a couple days. They then collect Spirit Bomb so it can release the Pokemon it caught and capture these released Pokemon in commercial Pokeballs. This Pokemon is one of my best designed. Both concept and appearance are on top tier in my opinion. Now onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be redesigning a Corsola by replacing the S with another C to make Corcola. First, I'll start with its round body made of glass. Instead of horns, they will be made of parts of glass bottles. I'll give it red banding and lids as well as sugar cube legs. A empty glass horn is in the middle of its head for a bit of character, as well as red eyes. And finally, I'll add carbonated bubbles to its cola. Now, introducing Corcola, the cola Pokemon. From Coral and Cola, a water fairy type with the abilities Sweet Veil, Hospitality, and hidden ability Super Sweet Syrup. Corcola are very gracious Pokemon, offering everyone they come across a drink. The cells of Corcola rapidly duplicate and enhance the sugars of berries to create a real sweet treat. This Pokemon wouldn't be able to exist unless for collaboration reasons, but it's still great. I especially enjoy the shiny being a nod to Pepsi. For my first Pokemon, I'll be creating the first stage of my Pseudo Evolution line. This line will be based off the Hydra as well as Ghidorah. We already have a Hydra Pseudo Legendary, but my take on a Hydra Pokemon will differ quite a bit from Hydreigon appearance wise. I'll start with its head. I'll make it large with a friendly expression, with a large petaled horned helmet. I'll give it a body and neck of a sauropod dinosaur. It will have a red stripe running down its spine, as well as petal plating on its back and its stumpy legs. I'll also add a rod at the end of its tail. I'll give it the main colour of a dark green and the petals a pink colour. Now introducing Singapod, the fun-loving Pokemon, from Single and Sauropod, a pure grass type with the ability Magic Guard. Singapod spend their time in deep and thick woodlands to avoid predators. In this environment, they will eat their weight in foliage and play with other Pokemon to create a healthy soul. Now, onto the second stage in this line. There is a particular flower that this line is based off of, called a Nigoxanthus, or a kangaroo paw. It inspired a Hydra Pokemon due to its appearance. For my mid-stage design, I'll start with two heads, one with the personality of its Prevo and the other a dumb expression for a goofy personality. It will be bipedal, so its two necks will connect to a round body, which is of course standing on its back two legs. It will have a flower helmet on both heads as well as plating on its four limbs and tail. It will now have rods coming out of its chin as well. Now introducing Duosum, the split flower Pokemon. From Duro and Blossom, a grass psychic type with the abilities Magic Guard and Keen Eye. Duosum can be found in suburban landscapes with access to nature. They condense their psychic power using the rods on their body to create masterful illusions. This includes one where this Pokemon looks like it has 1,000 heads. The head with the goofy personality is very unpredictable. It must have evolved this way as a defense to predators. Now onto my third Pokemon. I'll be taking a break from the Pseudo Legendary for a moment and create a new Pikachu clone. I'll be basing it off of the woolly mouse, an animal made in a genetics lab by giving the thick fur DNA of a woolly mammoth to an ordinary mouse. They look cool, so I think it'll make a good design. I'll start with a big round head and body. I'll give the body some shaggy fur and little hands, as well as stumpy legs. As for its head, I'll give it Dedenne-like whiskers coming out of its cheek pouches that look like part of a snowflake and lightning bolt. I'll give it a snout as well as Pikachu-like eyes. I experimented on trying to give it elephant ears, but it didn't look right to me, so I settled for or tiny ears encased in ice cubes. And finally, a bolt tail, which also has an ice cube at the end of it. Now, introducing Mamawot, the woolly mouse Pokemon. For Mammoth and Watt, a electric ice type with the abilities Slush Rush and new ability Immobilize, which has a chance of freezing or paralyzing the opponent if they make contact with this Pokemon. It will happen more often than Static, and it has the hidden ability Minus. Scientists are stumped by Mamawot's DNA, as it contains traces of Mamoswine DNA. Even more puzzling, it isn't a new occurrence, as it has been unchanged for thousands of years. This might be a sign that there was once the advanced civilization in the past. I enjoyed creating this Pokemon, and I could have seen Game Freak do something similar. Now onto my fourth and final Pokemon, the final form of my pseudo-legendary line. I'll start with its three heads. The left one will have a friendly expression, the right one will have a goofy expression, and the new middle head will have a stern expression that judges the goofy head. They will all have a helmet each again, as well as two chin rods each. They will have long necks connected to a stocky quadruped body with green bands around it. It will once again have petal plating on its back and legs, as well as the end of its tail, which has now got 3 rods. Now introducing Tridora, the collective mind Pokemon from Trio and Ghidorah, a grass psychic type with the abilities Magic Guard, Keen Eye, and new hidden ability Triple Trouble, which has a 2-in-1 chance of landing a physical attack with double the power, but also a 1-in-3 chance of KOing itself. Tridora live out on open plains due to its immense size that it can achieve when it's lived a long time. The middle head is in control and keeps itself secluded most of the time due to one of the heads causing others trouble. They rarely cross each other's paths, but it has a rivalry with a Pokemon that lives in the mountains. Now, for my first Pokemon, I'll be creating a regional corfish that lives in mangroves. As it's a first stage Pokemon, I'll combine it with features of a Propagule, a mangrove seedling. Not much will change for this regional other than some features being rounded, such as its head crest, claws and tail to resemble leaves. Its legs will become more hooked and a vibrant green colour will be added to it. Its default clueless expression and stance will remain the same. Now introducing Corfish, Somnium form, the Propagule Pokemon. A pure grass type with the abilities Hypercutter, Shell Armor, and new hidden ability Tidal Surge, which increases speed and evasiveness when hit with a water type move. Corfish live on coastline in the treetops of mangroves. They use their strong claws to swing from branch to branch in search of food. When nearing their evolution, they will set out on a voyage in search of a mangrove forest to claim as territory. Only some changes were made to this Pokemon, however it still achieves what in my mind is a regional Pokemon. Now, onto my second Pokemon, an evolution to Corfish. This Pokemon will actually look like a mangrove. I'll start with the basic shape of a Crawdont, but instead of its star-shaped crest, I'll add a bush with roots that come down to cover its face. I'll give it slightly larger claws, which also have bushes and roots coming down each side. Its lower claws will become mangrove-like roots, as well as a unique chest pattern will be added. And finally, a mostly brown colouring with hints of blue and green. Now introducing Crawdont, Somnium form, the mangrove Pokemon, a grass dark type with the abilities Hypercutter, Shell Armor, and Tidal Surge. Once a Crawdont has secured a territory, it is more likely you'll see a Grumpig fly than a Crawdont lose its home. It embeds itself in submerged roots of mangroves and is an absolute nightmare for trainers and Pokemon to encounter, as whatever Crawdont gets its claws around will surely become part of the mangroves. I really like how this design turned out. I would really like to explore the area this Pokemon lives if it were in a game. Now, onto my third Pokemon. I'll be designing a regional form for Clauncher. I'll be combining it with features of a mantis shrimp, an animal that can punch so fast underwater that the water is briefly heated to a temperature the same as the surface of the sun. So I'll start with its big claw and turn it into a boxing glove. The whiskers on its head are now segmented. It will be coloured boldly with red, orange, green and blue, and 2 other transition colours. And finally, I'll give it bruises on its face. Now, introducing Clauncher, Somnium Form, the Mantis Shrimp Pokemon, a water fire type with the abilities Iron Fist and Tinted Lens. Clauncher is capable of punching at similar temperatures to that of a magma's core. They only fight other members of its own species, as its sole goal is to become the strongest Pokemon among its peers. I'm really proud of this Pokemon for its bold colours and concept, and for its shiny looking like a yet to be unlocked character. Now, onto its evolved form and final Pokemon, Clawitzer. Instead of a gun as a claw, it will have a big gauntlet capable of dishing out strong physical attacks. Its claw will be a unique design. It will look like a draconic lion with ridges around its mouth to look like fingers of a balled up fist. It will have two segments that trail off the back of it to look like a layered mane. It will once again have segmented whiskers that trail from front to back. As for the rest of the Pokemon, it will look like it's made up of fiery segments also. Now, introducing Clawitzer, Somnium Form, the Gauntlet Pokemon, a water fire type with the abilities Iron Fist and Tinted Lens. Clawitzer live in groups called a dojo, where they live in deep sea volcanic vents, where they train and spar with one another. Rarely does this happen, but when a rumble occurs, the resulting shockwaves may cause localized earthquakes and eruptions. This Pokemon is one of my favourite I've designed to date. Its shiny is a reference to the fact that the Mantis Shrimp can see a colour spectrum that is 5 times wider than humans, so a colourblind black and white shiny seemed ideal for this line, and I could imagine it being a favourite among shiny hunters. For my first Pokemon, I'll be creating a Mega Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet is quite a unique Pokemon, as it is only able to damage its opponent by first getting hit and using either Counter or Mirror Coat to hit their opponent back with double the damage they took. Mirror Coat hits back special moves, while Counter reflects back physical moves. However, Mirror Coat is a psychic attack and counters a fighting type move, so only one of these moves gets stabbed. So the Mega I'll create for Wobbuffet will also have the fighting type in. I'll start with Wobbuffet's bulbous body. I'll give it 6 legs as well as 4 arms positioned in a way to emulate spar bars, a piece of fighting equipment that spins back at you after being hit. One of the arms can't be seen as it's behind Wobbuffet. Its tail is now tied around its waist like a karate belt. A giant bump has been added to the top of its head. A distressed expression is added by rotating its eyes 180 degrees. And finally, targets will be added to its bump, face and arms. Now, introducing Mega Wobbuffet, the Patient Pokemon, a psychic fighting type with the abilities Shadow Tag and hidden ability Telepathy. Mega Wobbuffet is constantly in a life or death situation, as its brain now sits on top of its skull and the lump on its head. The belt around its waist tightens with great force if Wobbuffet tries to run away from a fight, forcing it to stay still and wait for the incoming attack. This Pokemon's design is really something. It really looks like it was created by Game Freak. What do you think? Now, for my second Pokemon, I'll be creating Mega Druddigon. Druddigon has no Prevos and Evos, and was introduced in Gen 5. It is a very basic looking dragon type, so why don't I expand on this by giving it an even greater draconic appearance. I'll do this by combining it with features of the dragon from the Welsh flag. I'll start with its head and give it the hooked nose as well as the arrow tongue of the Welsh dragon as a chin protrusion. Its stance will be a mix between a quadruped and a biped, and the hardy scoots running down its chest are now also located on its limbs and the side of its body. I'll give it wings, a tail with an arrowhead at the end of it, and finally I'll invert its blue and red colouring. Now introducing Mega Druddigon, the cave Pokemon, a pure dragon type with the abilities Rough Skin, Sheer Force and hidden ability Mold Breaker. Mega Energy has given Mega Druddigon even more draconic power than before. Scientists believe its newfound powers make it the pinnacle of dragon kind. It's only second to the original dragon, however there is no conclusive evidence it exists other than legends. Now, onto my third Pokemon. I'll be creating a Mega Haxorus. Haxorus was also introduced in Gen 5, and you wouldn't be laughed at for assuming it was a pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Throughout its evolution line, its tusks have developed into axe blades. So let's develop its axe tusks to their limits with Mega Evolution. I'll start by drawing a tuskless Haxorus and add a more bulky body. Its arms will have claws that have developed into axe blades. Now, for the main part of its design, I'll add a giant axe head splitting this Pokemon in two. This will be evident by its two tails that look like they are one, but they are split. Its legs will be very similar, and finally I'll add scars throughout its body. Now, introducing Mega Haxorus, the Axe Jaw Pokemon. A pure dragon type with the abilities Rivalry, Mold Breaker, and hidden ability Unnerve. Out of all Mega Pokemon, Mega Haxorus is in the most pain. The energy from its Mega Stone has broken off its tusks, enlarged them into a giant axe head that has split Haxorus in two. Only the power of its will is keeping this Pokemon together. This is a very dark Pokemon, even where Megas are concerned, so I don't think Game Freak would design Mega Haxorus this way. Now, onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be creating a Mega Evolution for Pukumuku. Pukumuku was introduced in Generation 7. In its Pokedex entries, it says that people are paid to toss them back into the ocean when they become too abundant on the beaches, which is quite funny. This Pokemon is based off the sea cucumber, which defends itself by ejecting its organs to scare its predators. But as its Pokemon, Pukumuku ejects a giant hand. Let's start with a Pukumuku facing downwards. Then I'll draw its ejected hand that it walks around on in a comical fashion. To make it look extra creepy, I'll develop two of its horns into giant hands, as well as add a fluffy clown-like haircut. Now, introducing Mega Pukumuku, the Sea Cucumber Pokemon, a pure water type Pokemon with the abilities Inner Doubt and hidden ability Unaware. Mega Pukumuku is very tame by Mega Pokemon standards. However, during battle, if it spots an unintended child, it is capable of lobbing them up to half a kilometre out into the ocean. It seems a vengeful subconscious controls this Pokemon's every whim. Subsequently, some regions have banned the use of this Mega, as they've found a correlation between children going missing and increased Mega Pukumuku sightings. Now, for my first Pokemon, I'll be basing it off the character and protagonist, Tanjiro Kamado. Tanjiro has a green and black checkered coat and a burn on his forehead as notable features, as well as carrying his little sister around in a box on his back so she doesn't get burned by the sunlight. There is an insect called the bagworm moth caterpillar that builds its cocoon out of materials in its environment such as sticks. What if I combine this animal with an undertaker so it's carrying around a coffin on its back, and inside it will be the Pokemon I'll base off his little sister Nezuko. It's going to need to be a pretty big bug type Pokemon in order to carry around a coffin. So I'll start with its 5 body segments with a 6th one heading up as a neck to support its head. I'll give it a hood and a cloak made of leaves that will sit under the coffin made of logs. The cloak will have square holes in it to look like Tanjiro's cloak. Its 6 legs will be scythe-like and burr marks are placed throughout its body. Now, introducing Tandertaker, the Undertaker Pokemon from Tanjiro and Undertaker, a bug dark type Pokemon with the abilities Overcoat and Friend Guard. Despite its ominous appearance, Tandertakers are very caring Pokemon. They appear when a Pokemon is near passing on to the afterlife and will stick around to comfort the Pokemon in need. They will also fend off any Pokemon trying to attack the one under their care. They carry around a Vesperuco in their coffin as they have a symbiotic relationship. I don't think this Pokemon looks legendary or mythical, but if Game Freak were to create a Pokemon with such a serious theme, they probably would make it a legendary or mythical. Now, onto my second Pokemon. I'll base it off of Tanjiro's little sister Nezuko. At the start of the show, we see the whole of Tanjiro's family dead. Well, all but one, and that was Nezuko. However, she was turned into a demon. A notable ability she acquired was being able to control her mass, so she can grow big and strong for combat, but also she can shrink down to hide in the box that Tanjiro carries around, so she doesn't burn to death in the sunlight. Nezuko wears what appears to be a pink kimono, and has long black hair with orange tips. Demons are quite close to vampires weakness-wise, and pufferfish can change their size. Let's create a hybrid between a bat and a pufferfish. I'll give it a round head and body with stubby arms, big ears, eyes, and pufferfish teeth, as well as spikes will be added throughout its body. I'll give it wings made out of Nezuko's hair, and finally colour it pink, orange and black. Now introducing Vesperuco, the puffer bat Pokemon. From Vesper, meaning evening in Latin, and Nezuko, a ghost flying type with the abilities Flame Body, Tangling Hair, and new ability Expand, which raises defense and special defense when inflicted with a status condition. Vesperuco are neither alive nor dead. It likes going on adventures, but sensitivity towards the light causes this to be quite difficult. It enjoys doing battle with any Pokemon it comes across to protect its friends. That is why it's thought as the perfect partner for Tandertaker. I really like this design. It feels like it could have been introduced between Generation 2 and 4 by Game Freak. Now onto my third Pokemon, who will be based on the travel companion called Inosuke. Inosuke is a fierce warrior who walks around shirtless with a boar's head on the top of his head. When his face is revealed, it is realised that he has quite a feminine face. His hair colour is dark with blue ends. So I'm going to create a Pokemon that disguises itself as a more powerful Pokemon so it doesn't get attacked. I'll start with a giant boar head disguise and place a bipedal piglet underneath, so the boar looks like a giant hairstyle. A giant wispy tail will be added to the hairstyle with a corkscrew at the end to resemble that of a pig's tail. I'll place normal strands of hair below the boar head and will be shaped to have hooves. And finally, a friendly expression will be added to the piglet. Now, introducing Hildenos, the hairstyle Pokemon. From Hildisvini, the boar that fights alongside the Norse god Frasier, and Inosuke, a ground fairy type with the abilities Intimidate and Tangling Hair. Hildenos meticulously style their hair to look big and scary in order to avoid unnecessary battles. They use a mixture of mud and berries to dye its hair. This Pokemon is quite unique. I might evolve it in the future. What do you think about your Pokemon Inosuke? I hope that means you like it. strange fella. Now, onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be basing it off the character called Zenitsu. Zenitsu is quite an annoying character to me, being both a coward and desperate for female attention. He does, however, have a cool design, as well as a split personality, where he turns into the ultimate lightning warrior when the danger is high enough. I think the best animal to represent Zenitsu is the honeybee, as it is quite harmless, but can be annoying when you hear it buzzing in your ear about how scared it is episode after episode. Plus, it really uses its sting like Zenitsu switching personalities. His appearance consists of layers of blocky hair and a jacket that both transition from yellow to orange. So I'll start with a roughly round head with antennae and some tufts of hair along its jawline. Its eyes have triangles from Zenitsu's jacket and have the expression of a serious Pokemon. Onto its body, I gave it layers upon layers of squared off hair with alternating colours. Its arms are lanky and hairy, and I added a Cortana instead of a stinger. And finally, its last wings with very faint patterns on them. Now, introducing Zapnitsu, the Electro Vesp Pokemon. From Zap and Zenitsu, a bug electric type with the abilities Static, Swarm and new ability Charge Switch, which swaps its defense and speed for attack and special attack every turn. Zapnitsu are nomadic in nature and travel in small hives under 30 members. They wander in search for a place to live and defend such as Beedrill and Combi nests. Once a suitable nest is found, they become aggressors when anything foreign comes near the hive. Despite my dislike for Zenitsu, I like how his design turned out. The first Pokemon I saw was Bruntame. It's a very interesting looking Pokemon with no true discernible origin from a single animal, as it has both features of reptiles and mammals, with horns, hair and a shell. I was stuck for what direction I wanted to take this Pokemon in, so I looked for clues within its name. Brunt sounds like it can take the brunt of any attack, and Tame implies a friendly nature. So since it appears to be a chimera, I will evolve its features to create Pokemon that become both fiercer and friendlier. Also, here's a Pokédex entry I created for this Pokemon. Bruntame, the Chimera Pokemon from Brunt and Tame. A pure dragon type with the abilities Shell Armor and Tough Claws. Bruntame are excellent playmates for children as young as 1 year old. Despite its sharp horns, it is keenly aware that they can harm children and are constantly conscious to the movements of the child they play with, as to avoid any harm they could cause. Now that I've introduced you to True Green 7's first design, I will now show you designs I've created. Now, for my first design, it will look like it if Bruntame was in early adolescence, so it transitions well to the final stage I have planned. I'll make its horns on its head slightly bigger and more stubby, and I'll add the addition of 2 extra horns at the back of its head. The hair on its head will become more free and wacky and less uniform. I'll give it a unique facial pattern with a friendly facial expression. Its shell has developed and now protects its underbelly. I'll place a 3rd horn on its shell, and its tail will be topped with fur, and I'll finally pose it in a fighting stance. Now, introducing Bruntine, the Chimera Pokemon from Brunt and Teen. A dragon fighting type with the abilities Shell Armor and Tough Claws. Bruntines are fun-loving and a perfect playmate for children. Their martial arts style fighting techniques are also highly regarded. Combine this with its highly sociable nature, you won't ever need to get a babysitter for your children when you leave the house. I designed this Pokemon to look wacky and a bit weird, and I think that it conveys this very well. Now, onto its evolution and the final stage for this Pokemon line. A perfect balance and blend of friendly and fierce is what I want to create. So I'll start with its head. I'll give a shell helmet with 4 big pointy horns. Its expression will still be friendly. Its body will be comprised of 3 torso segments, all with shells and topped with fur. The middle one will have a horn sticking out the top and side. Its front legs will be mostly covered in fur and sport some powerful claws, whereas the back legs look more mammalian, and finally a tail sticking up in the air. Now, introducing Bruntera, the Chimera Pokemon from Brunt and Terra, a dragon fighting type with the abilities Shell Armor, Tough Claws, and Friend Guard. Despite its name, Bruntera, like their mid-stage counterpart, are very good with children, and are capable of looking after a whole class of children by themselves. They are located far north of Unova, but are very rare. They only seem to exist in captivity and are mostly owned as playmates for the children of the mega rich. One Bruntera was entered in a martial arts competition and was able to karate chop through 11 steel girders in one swipe. I think I carried out my objective perfectly as a blend between a friendly Dragonite and a fierce Haxorus, personality wise of course. Now, onto True Green's second design. From when I first saw it, I could tell it was a Trilobite, and its name Trilobrite backs my assumption up. The bright in its name suggests that it will eventually evolve into an electric type, and its carapace reminds me of a captain's hat. Trilobites lived in the oceans, so why don't I create an evolution that is a pirate and utilizes the light? But first, let's give this Pokemon a Pokedex entry. Introducing Trilobrite, the Trilobite Pokemon from Trilobite and Bright, a bug type Pokemon with the abilities Battle Armor and Overcoat. Trilobrite eat a algae which produces bioluminescence. They absorb this ability and gather on shorelines at night to produce magnificent light shows and to socialise with one another. Now that I've introduced you to True Green's second design, I will now create the evolution for it. For my first design, as I've said previously, I'll create a evolution with pirate attributes. So I'll start with its head. I'll shape the first set of scoots from its carapace as a pirate's hat. I'll give it a slightly bigger nose than its Prevo, as well as a friendly expression. The 4 other scoots are angled downwards to look like a captain's coat. The first segment of its torso will have a ring around it, and its arms are positioned in a way that gives this Pokemon the appearance of being an obedient first mate. As for the second segment of its torso, I'll have its arms folded in, as to not make the design too complex for a mid-stage. Now, introducing Trilobite, the pirate Pokemon from Trilobite and Pirate, a pure bug type Pokemon with the abilities Battle Armor and Overcoat. Trilobite are the best choice for any sailor or captain in want of a reliable first mate. They are able to emit light that they absorb during the day to aid in sailing through fog and the darkness that night brings. They are also an essential part of the team when taking part in a deep sea salvage operation. If I was in the Pokemon world, I'd have this guy in my arsenal, as I'd personally want to explore shipwrecks for treasure. Now, for its evolution, I'd like to change its profession to that of a samurai. But not only that, its scoots will become solar panels. Its helmet will be that of a traditional samurai, with a couple yellow bands around it. Its carapace will consist of 3 sets of 2 solar panel scoots. Its face will have the nose of its Prevo as well as a similar looking appendage that comes out of its chin that is longer, so it looks like a beard. And its face will sport a serious expression. The first segment of its torso has a band that's shaped like a light bulb. Its first set of arms have solar panels as shoulder pads and are positioned in a way to give this Pokemon a dominant feeling. The second segment of its torso has arms that have developed into samurai swords. Now, introducing Solari, the samurai Pokemon from Solar and Samurai, a bug electric type with the abilities Battle Armor, Overcoat, and new ability Light Speed. Light Speed increases speed every turn during sunlight, but decreases speed during sandstorms, hailstorms, and rainstorms. Solari is an underrated powerhouse Pokemon. The power it can exert on its foes is greatest when it is exposed to plenty of sunlight. If you combine this power with its honed fighting techniques, it is assured you can achieve any feat. However, an experienced trainer is needed to complement this Pokemon's gifts during times where there is a lack of sunlight. This is a very cool looking Pokemon, and it does a good job of not looking too human despite being based off of one. For my first Pokemon, I'll be basing it off the character Spider-Man, who is one of the most popular superheroes of all time. Spider-Man was first created in 1962 by Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. Its memorable design combined with a likeable personality is probably the reason for its popularity. For my Pokemon design, I'll be basing it off the Spider-Man suit from Infinity War, which was created by Tony Stark and has 4 giant legs coming out of its back. So I'll start with a round head, which I'll give 4 eyes and a mandible with a smile between its fangs. Then I'll give it a bulky abdomen with a web pattern on it. I'll give it 2 stubby arms, 4 big legs, and finally I'll give it red and blue colouring. Now, introducing Spidor, the Spider-Man Pokemon from Spider-Man and Neighbour, a pure bug type with the abilities Frisk, Quick Feet and Sticky Hold. Spidor lives in groups in the near suburban and city areas. They are kind Pokemon that enjoy helping out and stopping evil doers. However, they have a clumsy nature which can cause more trouble than intended. When scolded by trainers and other people, they all blame each other by pointing at one another. I really enjoy creating this Pokemon, and its shiny is a reference to Miles Morales. Don't you think it
is just full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen?
Let me know in the comments down below. Now, onto my second Pokemon. I'll be basing it off of Wolverine, who was created in 1974. His power is retractable claws that come out of between his knuckles. His claws were later replaced by adamantium blades in an experiment where his skeleton was also infused in adamantium. So for his design, I'll of course be creating a bipedal Wolverine with metal claws. His ears will look like the tufts of hair that Wolverine has as a haircut. Spikes from Wolverine's mask will cover its eyes, and I'll give it mutton chops on the side of its face. Its body is designed to look a bit like Wolverine's suit, and finally blades are added to each of his hands. Now, introducing Morgan, the Wolverine Pokemon from Wolverine and Logan, a steel fighting type with the abilities Battle Armor, Bulletproof and Guts. Morgan are rare and mostly solitary creatures that tend to live in isolation. Despite this, it is generally seen as a good Pokemon who helps those in danger. It spends around 8 hours a day sharpening its blades to be able to cut through anything. This design could have turned out better. I think I gave it too thick of an outline. However, I find it shiny strangely appealing. Who knew if you switched Wolverine's blue and yellow colouring and changed its brown colouring, it would look. Now, onto my third Pokemon. I'll be basing it off of the character called the Punisher, who's a personal favourite of mine. The Punisher is an anti-hero with no powers, but he is a highly skilled ex-soldier. His personal sense of justice is to take out criminals so they can't harm anyone else again. He is quite tough, so I'll combine him with a Rottweiler. Its head will have the Punisher emblem on it, with eyebrows that look like the eyes of the Punisher skull. The nose is also inspired by the emblem, and the teeth pattern travels down to its chest area. Its body will have a camouflage pattern, and its tail looks like the hammer of a gun. And finally, I'll give it a black, white, grey and orange colouring. Now, introducing Rotisher, the Punisher Pokemon. From Rottweiler and Punisher, a pure dark type with the abilities Intimidate, Arena Trap, and Guard Dog. Rotisher are known to only live in cities, and their presence in the city means a notable decrease in nighttime crime. It can be very aggressive at times and is often described as a lone wolf, but those who do manage to befriend it will have a friend for life. This is one of my favourite designs I've created, and its shiny is also cool as it references his army days. I could imagine being cornered by a pack of Rotisher in a dark and dingy alleyway, terrified, and the last sound I'd ever make would be no. Wait. Now, onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be basing it off of the character Thor, who was created in 1962. Thor is the god of thunder and one of the original members of the Avengers. He wields a hammer called Mjolnir, which aids him greatly in battle. I have an interesting thought on a Pokemon design for Thor, in which a cousin to Spiritomb emanates electrical energy from a hammer instead of a stone. So I'll do just that. I'll start with a hammer sat on the ground, then I'll give it a thunderbolt shaped body with fierce looking jagged edges. I'll give it a face similar but unique to that of Spiritomb, and instead of green introducing spirits, I'll give it blue thunderbolts in its body. Now, introducing Spirifor, the 4 Pokemon from Spirit and 4. A electric steel type with the abilities Static, Levitate and Drizzle. Spirifor are very strong Pokemon that enjoy thunderstorms, as it's a chance for them to gather and party with each other. It will throw its own hammer across the sky to travel faster than it usually can. It is said that a trainer that can lift their Spirifor's hammer is worthy of the partnership between themselves and this Pokemon. This Pokemon is also one of my favourites, and I think it captures the essence of a Pokemon easily, as it is already based off of Spiritomb. For my first Pokemon, I'll be creating a regional form for Carbink, a Pokemon without evolutions and pre-evolutions. It was introduced in Generation 6 in Pokemon X and Y, and its design appears to be a floating rock with diamonds embedded throughout its body. So for my design, let's change the gem to that of an amethyst. I'll make its body round like an uncut geode. I'll take some creative liberties and give it a similar design aspect of the original Carbink and have amethyst protruding out of its body. The fur collar has become more scruffy and its eyes are now diamond shaped. And finally, its ears are now shaped like antennae. Now, introducing Carbink, Somnium form, the Amethyst Pokemon, a rock fairy type with the abilities Clear Body and Sturdy. This regional form of Carbink are found living around amethyst mines. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and shades, and the more unique an individual is, the higher the price it can be sold for. I enjoyed creating this regional form, but perhaps the crystals could use refining. I also plan to make an evolution for this Pokemon in the future, so stay tuned for it. Now, onto my second Pokemon. I'll be creating a new Pokemon with close relations to the Pokemon Spinder. Spinder was introduced in Generation 3 in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, and it has quite the quirky design that constantly spins around. Its stats also reflect its behaviour by adding up to 360. So what if instead of spinning it zigzagged to get around? I'll give it the basic shape of a Spinder, but with zigzagged bolt shaped ears and arms. I'll also give it bolt shaped black eyes and ear holes, and finally once again yellow bolt shaped patterns. Now introducing Gizgaz, the Bolt Panda Pokemon from Zigzag but backwards, a pure electric type with the abilities Static, Tangled Feet and Motor Drive. Gizgaz can only move diagonally through its environment. Experienced Pokemon battlers enjoy battling this Pokemon due to its unique fighting style. This Pokemon was very easy to create, and I could see it being a Pokemon that Game Freak would create. Now, onto my third Pokemon. I'll be creating another regional Pokemon for Cubchoo. Cubchoo was introduced in Generation 5 in Pokemon Black and White. The main aspect of its design was a bear cub with a big drop of mucus dangling out of its nose. I had the idea to combine this Pokemon with mint chocolate chip ice cream. So once again, I'll start off with the silhouette of Cubchoo, and I'll make its ears out of scoops of ice cream. This will reoccur many more times with the head, body, muzzle and tail. The ice cream will also look melted onto each other, and I'll give it chocolate chips as nose, ear openings and feet pads on legs that are now made of ice cream cones. Now, introducing Cubchoo, Somnium form, the ice cream Pokemon. A ice fairy type with the abilities Slush Rush, Pixelate and new ability Brain Freeze, which freezes the foe solid if they use a bite type move. This variant of Cubchoo is only slightly more popular with trainers than other Cubchoo. This is due to its flavour being quite divisive among fans of ice cream. I enjoyed creating this Pokemon a lot, as it's finally an ice cream Pokemon I'd like to use on my team. Now, onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be creating an evolution for the regional Cubchoo I just created. Beartic was also introduced in Gen 5 alongside Cubchoo, and was quite the basic design, being just a bipedal polar bear with icicles around its mouth. So I'll develop the mint chocolate chip ice cream attribute of its Prevo into that of Neapolitan ice cream. Neapolitan ice cream has 3 flavours, which are strawberry, chocolate and vanilla. So for its design, I'll give it chocolate ice cream for a base, then a scoop of vanilla ice cream on top of that for the mid body, and then a scoop of strawberry ice cream on top of that for its head. I'll give it vanilla ice cream ears and a chocolate ice cream scoop on top of its head. Its paws have 3 fingers with 3 different flavours, as well as cones for claws and a replacement for icicles. And finally, I gave it 2 bonus cones as spikes on its lower body. Now, introducing Beartic, the ice cream Pokemon, a ice and fairy type, with the abilities Slush Rush, Pixelate and Brain Freeze. This variant of Beartic came about when the Vanillite, Vanillish and Vanillux vanished from its habitat. That opened up that particular evolutionary niche, leading to a better ice cream Pokemon that I'd definitely have on my team. For my first Pokemon, I'll be basing it off the villain called Twice, also known as Jin Babai Gawara. His quirk allows himself to clone himself seemingly infinitely. This however takes quite a huge mental toll on him, as all his clones eventually don't get along with each other and start unaliving one another, having to kill many copies of himself, as well as forgetting whether or not he is the original Twice, would take its toll on anyone. So to incorporate his quirk into his design, I'll make him 2 bacteria cells that are almost done dividing. I'll give it 2 heads, 1 happy and 1 sad, just like the theatrical faces. Each head is propped up by chromosomes that they use to walk on as legs. They are mostly encased in a translucent bacterium body. And finally, I'll give this pair a couple of tentacles each. Now, introducing Moltwice, the self-cloning Pokemon, a dark psychic type with the abilities Co-Star, a new ability called Double Trouble, which doubles the amount of hits of multi-hit moves. Moltwice might be small, but it packs a punch. It's advised for only experienced trainers to look after this Pokemon, due to it being emotionally unstable. It is known to gather in groups quickly, but disperse just as fast when they get sick of each other. This Pokemon is very interesting design-wise, and I think it perfectly encapsulates Twice's personality. What do you think? Now, for my second Pokemon, I'll be basing it off of the hero from Class 1A, Red Riot, also known as Ijiro Kirishima. His quirk allows him to harden his skin to become jagged and hard like rock. His costume contains a black brace around his head, cogs around his shoulder and red rags that hang down from his waist. He also has red hair and red eyes. The animal I'll base this design on is the rhinoceros beetle, while also containing attributes of a spirit from Japanese mythology. It will be bipedal with a boulder for a torso. I'll give it a head brace from its costume with the addition of a prominent beetle horn. Its exoskeleton on its arm is only partially covering to look like shielding strapped around with more braces. Now, introducing Shiwadu, the riot Pokemon from Shimigami, Japanese for Death Spirit, Iwa meaning rock in Japanese, and Budu meaning also Japanese for riot. It has the abilities Intimidate, Guts, and new hidden ability Skin Armor, which raises defense and special defense by 1 stage if hit with a super effective move. Shiwadu are relentless Pokemon that train in honing their defense. They do this in solitude away from people and Pokemon, but if they come across another Shiwadu, they will battle for each other's respect. If successful, they will begin a lifelong partnership and take their strength to new heights. Its design was very fun to create. I could see it being a fan favourite for sure. Now, for my third Pokemon, I'll be basing it off of the hero from Class 1A, Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite, also known as Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo's quirk is causing explosions with the palms of his hands that are fueled by nitroglycerin, which he sweats. His hero costume contains a hoodie with cargo pants with harnesses and, as well as knee pads and boots, he also wears gauntlets shaped like grenades. His main colours are orange, black and green. He has a very angry personality and enjoys taking down his enemies. For his design base, I'll give him the lion, as I think it will reflect his personality best. I'll make his mane sharp like his haircut and give it locked on eyes as well as a toothed grin. On its nose and tail, a grenade is located. I made its paws look gloved and gave it shin pads on its back legs. And finally, a harness on its torso. Now, introducing Bomuba, the explosive Pokemon, from Bomu meaning bomb in Swahili and Simba, which means lion, also in Swahili. A fighting electric type with the abilities Intimidate, Anger Point, and new hidden ability Second Charge, which doubles the power of explosion and self-destruct. Bomuba are not social butterflies by any stretch of the imagination. It is known to be one of the most aggressive Pokemon ever, being set off by any inconvenience. But in a crisis, it will step up to save Pokemon alike. This Pokemon captures the essence of Bakugo very well. I made it look strong and powerful, but friendly enough that you'd want it to be your friend, which is the rule when creating Pokemon. Now, onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be basing it off of the hero from Class 1A, the Tentacle Hero, also known as Mezo Shoji. His quirk, called Duplicate Arms, gives him a set of 4 tentacles that he can transform the ends of into eyes and ears, which are better at gathering sensory information than his original eyes and ears. His costume is fairly basic, being a sleeveless vest which covers the lower part of his face, and he also has a belt with an eye on it. His colour palette consists of a dark purple and light blue. So for this design, as he has 8 limbs, I'll make him a bipedal octopus with 4 legs instead of 6 arms, which will balance out his design. To make this design even more interesting, I'll give him 1 eye, like a cyclops, because he covers up one of his eyes with his haircut. His tentacles span outwards with a membrane in between which contains a ear canal. It will have ridges on this membrane and head like that of a ear, as well as a belt pattern on its torso. And finally, a blue, pink and purple colour will be added. Introducing Ocalite, the Infinite Senses Pokemon, from Octopus, Cyclops and Satellite, a pure psychic type with the abilities Telepathy, Anticipation and Unseen Fist. Ocalite can use their biology to detect anything on any plane of reality. Its psychic ability allows it to monitor up to a 5-mile range. That is why this Pokemon is sought after as the ultimate security system. It was challenging to design a Pokemon based off of this character. For my first Pokemon, I'll be creating a fire starter based on an ox. As it's the first stage in the line, I'll make it a calf. I'll give it a timid personality by giving a shy looking eye, as well as placing its right leg behind its left so it looks like it's ready to run if scared. However, it will still face towards you as it is trying to be brave. I'll give it a big head and small horns, as well as a previously mentioned timid expression. I'll give it a dairy cow type sort of body blotches, coloured red and orange. Now, introducing Timicalf, the calf Pokemon, from Timid and Calf, a fire type with the abilities Blaze and Thick Fat. Timicalf are generally shy by nature, but they attempt to be brave in everything they do. They are seen in big groups in grasslands where they enjoy socialising with each other. I could see this being a Pokemon that Game Freak would create. What do you think? Now, onto its evolution. I'll be creating a ox that has some features of a Highland cow. I'll give it horns that come down beside its face and curve forwards, as well as some shaggy fur on the top of its head and body. It will have a more confident expression, even a more relaxed smile can be seen on its face. The shaggy coat on top of its body is a Highland cow orange colour. Its face will be grey and its body will have red and black patches, and finally its tail will look like it's a lit fuse of a stick of dynamite. Now, introducing Radiotox, the Fire Ox Pokemon from Radiator and Ox, a pure fire type with the abilities Blaze and Thick Fat. It also evolves from Timbercraft at level 17. Radiotox can be seen migrating in herds across vast mountain ranges. They enjoy battling each other, and if domesticated they can make a great farmhand. They do however have an aggressive streak when it comes to other bovine-like Pokemon, always wanting to defeat them in battle. This is my favourite mid-stage I've created for an evolution line. I believe it encapsulates everything that makes a mid-stage Pokemon a mid-stage. Now, on to the final stage and final evolution of this line. As with almost every fire type line, this Pokemon will become bipedal, and I'll convert its Ox attribute into that of a Minotaur. Another part of Greek culture is the brazen bull, which has a hollow metal ball that the Greeks used to execute other people by placing them inside and heating it with fire. To incorporate this, I'll give it the steel typing and give it a helmet, as well as metal gauntlets and other bits of scrap metal will be placed on its body. The helmet will have horns that face upwards, as well as a tuft of hair shaped like a mohawk, inspired by the Greeks' Roman neighbours. Its facial expression has become more serious on an elongated head. Its lower body has short stubby legs that are mostly covered by a tuft of hair that looks like torn clothing. And finally, a tail with fur shaped like a flame. Now, introducing Minotaur, the Minotaur Pokemon from Minotaur and Char, a fire steel type with the abilities Blaze, Thick Fat and Iron Fist. It also evolves from Radiotox starting at level 36. Minotaurs are very serious about getting stronger. They will achieve this by going deep beneath a mountain and hardening their metal by mining out tunnels. The configuration of these tunnels form a vast maze that many Pokemon like to call home. Minotaur wait in the deepest parts of these mazes, waiting for strong Pokemon and trainers to fight. I really enjoyed creating this Pokemon, but it's also not entirely perfect. Maybe it's the proportion of its lower body. What do you think? Now, onto my fourth and final Pokemon. I'll be creating a fighting Reggie, so I'll start off with a boxing glove for its head, and give its body a fighting gi, that of course contains the black belt. I'll configure the 7 eyes of its face that every Reggie has, in a unique pattern. I'll also give it a purple bruise on its face, surrounding 3 eyes which turn its white eyes black. As for its arms, I'll make it out of big chains that end with nunchucks for fingers. The gi will be slightly tattered, and finally I'll give it knee pads. Now, introducing Regifight, the mixed martial arts Pokemon from Reggie and Fight, a pure fighting type with the abilities Iron Fist and Unseen Fist. Regifight was a unique case because, unlike the other Reggies, it wasn't found asleep in its temple. It was found in its secret chamber, meditating beneath a waterfall, and scientists believe it spent millennia building inner focus. This is my favourite Reggie so far, and I believe it to be a good counterpart of another Reggie I created in another video. I also enjoy its shiny as a reference to Throw and Salt. For my first Pokemon, I'll be creating an evolution for the grass starter called Sleeth. Sleeth is a sloth Pokemon with elements such as a tuft of green hair on its head, as well as quite big claws. Sloths live in South America where it rains a lot, and mid-stage Pokemon are known to be both unique and awkward, so I'll give it a raincoat poncho made of leaves. As for its face, I'll protrude its nose out a bit and give it a friendly expression, as well as a bit of a brown around its mouth. Its arms and claws are crossed like a monk, which will hint at what it will evolve into. Introducing Slothoncho, the sloth Pokemon from Sloth and Poncho, a pure grass type with the abilities Overgrow and Overcoat, and hidden ability Grassy Surge. Slothoncho are known for their relaxed and laid-back nature, and are often seen walking around in nature, taking everyone and everything in. It can sense when an immense rainstorm is on its way, days in advance, and will make other Pokemon a raincoat poncho. This Pokemon is very charismatic and was fun to create. If Game Freak created it, then it would become my favourite mid-stage starter Pokemon. Now, onto its evolution. As grass-type Pokemon tend to be based off extinct animals, I'll base it off the giant ground sloth called Megatherium. It was big and bulky and would create smooth burrows, so I'll give it a secondary ground typing. As I've hinted at, I'll also combine it with a monk. So I'll start with the basic silhouette of a Megatherium and give it a bald spot on its head, along with hair running down the side of its head. Once again, I'll give it a friendly expression, and I'll pose one of its arms upwards and towards you like it can bring peace to an angry Pokemon. Instead of a raincoat poncho, I'll give it drapes that run down its back and both sides of the front of its body. These drapes are sometimes worn by actual priests, so it fits this Pokemon well, and they also will be made from leaves. I'll give the claws on its hands a dirt colour as well as give it stripes that run down its arms and legs. Introducing Monkterium, the monk Pokemon, from Monk, Terra meaning ground, and Megatherium, a grass and ground type, with the abilities Overgrow, Overcoat and Grassy Terrain. Monkterium are quite a lazy Pokemon, only emerging from their smooth burrows on Sunday. Once out of their burrow, however, they work tirelessly to help Pokemon in need, going as far as offering up their own burrow if needs be. If this happens enough, a Monkterium will create a cathedral-like burrow for the greater good of helping out the most Pokemon. I don't know how I feel about this Pokemon because it might need something else or something different. However, I still think it's a good design. For my third Pokemon, I'll be basing it off of the fire starter Pokemon Quick Kindle, which appears to be a Roadrunner with a white, red and yellow colouring. Roadrunners are known for their speed, so I'll develop this line with faster land-based birds in mind. The Chocobo is a fictional bird from Final Fantasy, and I'll use some of its attributes in this design, but it will mostly be just a transition between the final and first stage. I'll invert the fiery crest on its head and make it slightly bigger, as well as putting a fiery pattern on its beak. Then a blue pattern will be added to the neck and wing. Then the body will be covered in feathers in a fiery configuration. And finally, the white of the Prevo will become a grey ash colour. Introducing Chocol, the Chocobo Pokemon, from Chocobo and Coal, a pure fire type with the ability Blaze and hidden ability Speed Boost. Chocol are very competitive runners and are said to have infinite stamina, as it has never been witnessed to be exhausted. If you race a Chocol and don't put up a good competition, it will start to attack you relentlessly. This Pokemon was also challenging to create, as I didn't want it to look too close to a chicken, but I think I like how it turns out. What do you think? Now, onto its evolution. I want to develop it into a cassowary, a real-world bird that runs very fast. As it runs fast, I will give it the electric typing and incorporate that into its biology. I'll turn the crest and wings into a lightning bolt that fire emanates off of. The beak and upper eyelid will also become thunderbolt shaped. The neck will be blue with red spots, and the main body will be more feral and fiery and a black colouring. The legs will be shaped like thunderbolts, and the whole silhouette is in a running motion. Introducing Blazellarate, the cassowary Pokemon, from Blaze and Accelerate, a fire electric type with the abilities Blaze, Static and hidden ability Speed Boost. Wild Blazellarate have never been caught due to their high speed and stealth. They mark their territories with scorch marks in the shape of a thunderbolt to ward off rivals. If it wasn't for this behaviour and the existence of its pre-evolutions, this Pokemon would still be unknown to science. This Pokemon, in my opinion, is the design of mine that conveys the soul of a Pokemon the best. I'll look back on this Pokemon to see how I can capture the soul of this Pokemon again. Now, for my 5th Pokemon, I'll be basing it off the water starter Pokemon Iguana, which is based off the marine iguana with either eggshells or a white rock as a partial armour. Marine iguanas spend their time resting on land and have to enter the ocean in order to feed. So I'll develop this line with individuals who gradually evolve to become more capable of sustaining longer periods of time out at sea. For this mid-stage, I want to give it a partial sailor motif by giving it a sailor's cap that is just a couple of stones stacked onto each other. This mid-stage will also be responsible for transitioning between the white rock Iguana has and my stone of choice for the final stage, which is granite. So this mid-stage will also have a mix of the two stones. I'll give it a couple of spikes at the side of its head and pose its arms in a way that it looks ready for battle, as well as stone hands, which hints at how it will evolve in the future. I'll also develop the tail to have stone fins so it can swim faster. Now, introducing Igala, the sailor Pokemon, from Iguana and Sailor, a water and rock type with the abilities Torrent and Shell Armor. Igala spends most of its time in tropical regions where it sets itself adrift from island to island on an adventure. On this adventure, they will try new cuisine and battle never before seen Pokemon. This Pokemon was a challenge, however, I think it turned out quite well. Now, onto its evolution, the final Pokemon of this video. I want to develop its sailor motif into that of a conquistador, who were Spanish military who conquered Mexico and Peru in the 16th century. They wore interesting helmets and used maces as weapons, so I'll incorporate that into their design, along with some armour. Marine iguanas' heads are more square, so I'll develop this Pokemon's head realistically and place the unique helmet on top, made of granite, along with some spikes. The granite hands of the Prevo have developed mace-like claws to clobber its enemies with. A front plate of granite covers its chest with a spike protruding out of its chest, whereas the back plate has a couple of half-hexagon fins. I'll give it a continuous stripe that goes from its head with a serious expression all the way down to its tail, which has developed bigger fins for sailing. Introducing Conquanet, the Conquistador Pokemon, from Conquistador, Aqua and Granite, a water and rock type with the abilities Torrent and Shell Armor. Conquanet like to go on the hunt for colonies of other Pokemon to take over their home and rule over it with a granite fist. Once a territory has been secured, they can live out the rest of their days in this one location. Out of the 3 final stages of these Pokemon, this one is my second favourite. For my first Pokemon, I'll be creating the first stage in my grass type starter line. I'll start with the reptile, the Monitor Lizard, as the basis for its design. I'll give it a stick tail with leaves, as well as a little bush around its neck. 3 of the main colours will flow down the body and will consist of brown, dark green and grey. This Pokemon's biology allows for organic camouflage and will become more extreme down this evolution line. Introducing Monocamo, the camouflage Pokemon, from Monitor and Camouflage, a grass type with the abilities Overgrow and Corrosion. Monocamo live their lives hiding in leaf litter or the tree canopy, posed as a sapling or a new branch. Despite this knack for hiding, they are very friendly and will acclimate to their trainers quite easily. This Pokemon was quite fun to create and I think it slots in nicely with other grass type starters. For my second Pokemon, I'll base it off the Monitor Lizard's cousin, the Komodo Dragon, a bigger species. I'll move the bush to its underbelly and have the legs emerge from it. I'll give it 2 leaf plates along its back, as well as add a 3rd leaf to its bigger tail. I'll also carry over its friendly expression and continue the 3 stripes down the body. This Pokemon will convey a step towards better camouflage. Introducing Camouflage, the camouflage Pokemon from Komodo and Camouflage, a grass dragon type with the abilities Overgrow and Corrosion. Camouflage are a fun-loving Pokemon that likes to play games, especially hide and seek, where depending on the environment it will always win. They also take great care of their foliage, which gives them the upper hand in the games they play. I also enjoy this Pokemon as it has a classic middle stage evolution for a grass type starter. For my third and final Pokemon in this line, I'll base it off of the large extinct relative of the Monitor Lizard and Komodo Dragon called Megalania, and I will also evolve its foliage even further by covering its whole torso with the bush. Its tail has developed into a whole tree, and instead of 2 leaf plates on its back, a hump that mimics a rock has appeared. The edges of its stripes has become more rugged to make it look stronger. Introducing Galania, the Gillisuit Pokemon from Gillisuit and Megalania, a grass dragon type with abilities Overgrow, Corrosion, and new ability Septic, which applies a bit of extra damage to the target when using a bite-like attack. Galania are considered a handful by trainers everywhere, as they take their favourite game of hide and seek to the extreme by staying hidden for days, months, and even years. Due to its long lifespan, there have been reports of Galania hiding so long they outlive their trainers. Once they find this out, they swear off the game entirely. I enjoy the lore around this Pokemon, but perhaps it could use more unique foliage. Now, onto my fourth and final Pokemon, a Reggie, which I'll give the Ghost typing to. This Reggie will occur with the unaliving of a Regigigas, so I'll design a golem-like spirit that consists of a shadow encased in translucent ectoplasm, as well as parts from Regigigas' body. Its eyes have a similar arrangement to Regigigas, but now they are closer together and rotated 180 degrees. Now, introducing Regicide, the free soul Pokemon from Regi and Regicide, meaning unaliving of royalty. A ghost type with the ability Malware, which increases or decreases its stats at random during battle. There are many claims on where Regicide comes from. Scientists are divided on whether or not Regicide was birthed when a Regigigas attempted to pull the whole afterlife into the overworld, or a time traveller from a future age of little to no life. Whatever its origins, its abnormal behaviour distresses the other Regi Pokemon, especially Regigigas, although they can still work together. This is the sort of Pokemon I wish Game Freak would create more, because the mystery aspect of Pokemon is always interesting to me. For my first Pokemon, I've decided to create a regional form of Skrelp based on the Leafy Sea Dragon, a cousin of the Seahorse, which has appendages and limbs that look like seaweed. I always thought seahorses were more draconian in appearance than leafy sea dragons, and Game Freak has made the original Skrelp evolve into a dragon type, so for my regional variant, it won't be a dragon type. Now, introducing Skrelp, Somnium form, the sea dragon Pokemon, a grass water type with the abilities Torrent, Chlorophyll, and Swift Swim. Skrelp are found running about with each other near lagoons and rock pools. However, they are very shy and will use their natural camouflage to blend in with their surroundings when they spot someone they don't know. I think this Pokemon turned out excellent. It's exactly how I'd think Game Freak would do a regional form for Skrelp. What do you think? Now, onto my second Pokemon. I'll be creating an evolution for my regional Skrelp that will be its own Pokemon separate from Dragalge. As Dragalge is Draconian, I will be creating a horse-like evolution for my regional with a friendly personality, as it no longer has the poison typing. Now, introducing Ikelpie, the sea dragon Pokemon, from Equus and Kelpie, a grass and water type with the abilities Torrent, Chlorophyll, and Swift Swim. Ikelpie are known for hiding in swamps, bayous, and other stagnant bodies of water, waiting for unwary trainers to pass by. When a trainer does pass by, they gallop out of the water, hurling the trainer on their backs and giving them a ride, running across both landscapes and lakes. I like this Pokemon a lot, and having a positive spin on the horrific myth of the Kelpie is what Pokemon has done many times before. Now, for my third Pokemon, I'll be creating a Djinn Pokemon. Djinns are demons from the Arabic world, described in appearance as a human, snake or scorpion, and will create hybrid children with humans. So for my Pokemon, it'll be a snake-scorpion hybrid, and I'll also have its body made of ginger, so I can give it the interesting typing of Grass Fire. Now, introducing Gin Sting, the Ginger's Gin Pokemon, from Ginger and Sting, a Grass Fire type with the abilities Flame Body and Heat Proof. Gin Sting like to lay in wait in their burrows with only their tail emerge to lure in prey. Once prey is close, the main body launches fast to pin down its prey, allowing for the tail to deliver a final blow. This Pokemon has a great concept that I'll expand upon in its evolution. Now, onto its evolution and final Pokemon. I'll create a Pokemon that's fairly muscular looking, with the different sections of its body, and I'll give the two heads different personalities, one being calm and the other more aggressive. A dynamic pose, arms stretched wide, ready for combat, as well as double fangs angled upwards on the tail. Now, introducing Ginorpio, the Ginger Gin Pokemon, from Gin and Scorpio, a Grass Fire type with the abilities Flame Body and Heat Proof. Ginorpio are regarded as one of the most disciplined Pokemon, marching around their territories day and night when they are not eating and sleeping. Both heads work in perfect symbiosis despite their opposing personalities. I enjoyed making this Pokemon as it was challenging getting the right body proportions for each section. I still think I could have done better with their snake head, although I'm still satisfied with it. For my first Pokemon, I'll be basing this Pokemon off the character Tensei Leader, whose quirk is super speed. As well as exhaust pipes being part of his anatomy, his superhero costume is streamlined with ventilation holes to be more streamlined. So I'll need an animal that is fast, so I picked the gazelle to combine with these attributes of Ingenium. So I'll convert the horns of the gazelle into exhausts, as well as some golden boosters on its legs, and some more exhaust coming off the main body of the gazelle. And finally, I'll add spots to represent the ventilation of the suit. Now, introducing Ingazelle, the exhaust Pokemon from Ingenium and Gazelle, a steel type with the abilities Mirror Armor and Speed Boost. Ingazelle first appeared when a city was built on a savannah. They weave through traffic with ease and also clear polluted air by breathing it in. The city they reside in has very low crime due to their speed and intolerance of negative behaviour. I love this design a lot because I think it perfectly encapsulates Ingenium in Pokemon form. Now, for my second Pokemon, I'll be basing it off the character Minoru Mineta, also known as the hero Grape Juice. His quirk involves taking the purple balls on his head and lobbing them at his enemies to immobilize their movements due to their sticky nature. The fact that his hero name is Grape Juice is quite funny, so for this design I'll combine a bundle of grapes with attributes of the Caped Crusader. I'll start with a few spheres to represent the actual grapes, with stick vines for legs. I'll give it arms and a cape made of leaves, and pose him like an image I saw of Mineta. And finally, a leaf mask along with an unsure expression. Introducing Grapinetta, the grape Pokemon, from Grape and Mineta, a grass type with the abilities Overgrow, Gluttony and new ability Sticky, which lowers the opponent's evasiveness and speed if they make contact with Grapinetta. Grapinetta patrols orchards and vineyards, protecting farmers' crops from wild Pokemon. They are famous for almost always preferring female trainers, but at the same time, female trainers almost always dislikes this Pokemon. Scientists cannot find any logical reasons for this. Looking at this Pokemon, I think I could improve upon its design, but at the same time, I still like it. Now, onto my third Pokemon. I'll be basing it off of the character Shoto Todoroki, whose hero name is just Shoto. His quirk gives him the ability to use both fire and ice powers. Shoto's hair is half white and half red, and he has a scald mark around one of his eyes, which represents his dark family past. If he uses one of his powers too much, he begins to overheat or freeze. When this occurs, he uses the opposite power to negate these effects. So he's the perfect balance, like a yin and yang symbol. I had the idea to combine the synchronicity of his powers with a panda, so I started with a bipedal figure. So I started giving it snowflake patterns on its arms and fire patterns on its legs, as well as a scald pattern around one of its eyes. From one of its arms, a fire emanates and the other has ice protruding out of it. And finally, I added a yin and yang symbol on its stomach made of fire and ice. Now, introducing Taipancha, the polar opposite Pokemon, from Taiji meaning the grey area between yin and yang, panda and temperature. A fire ice type with the abilities Blaze, Thick Fat and new ability Freeze Burn, which swaps the typing of fire and ice type moves every turn. Taipancha was the result of scientists forcefully hybridizing two existing Pokemon together. Despite how it came about, it still wants to help people and Pokemon alike, in the harshest of deserts and the coldest of tundras. I enjoyed creating this Pokemon and I prefer this fire ice type to Galarian Darmanitan. Now, for my fourth and final Pokemon, I'll be basing it off the villain Tomura Shigaraki, also known as Tenko Shimura, whose quirk, called Decay, disintegrates matter. His clothing consists of black clothes that turn into rags during a serious battle due to his decay quirk. He also wears the embalmed hands of his victims as a reminder of his dark past. As he is quite a rugged and feral individual, I'll base his design with the Wolverine in mind. As for his quirk Decay, everything he touches turns into dust, so I'll also add the attribute of a black hole to his Pokemon design. So I'll start with the head of a Wolverine, baring its teeth with a crazed look in its eye, and then I'll add a fur sort of collar to represent the horizon of a black hole. As it will be a ghost type, I'll give it long furry arms and an elongated gorge body that becomes translucent at the end, where a third hand resides. To represent the embalmed hands Tomura wears, I'll add boulders, one covering part of his face and the rest scattered along the body. Now, introducing Wolverine, the Decay Pokemon. From Wolverine and Disintegrate, a rock ghost type with the abilities Arena Trap, Curse Body and new ability Black Hole, which destroys any items on the field. Wolverine are said to be spirit Pokemon from deep space. They are very erratic Pokemon and will disintegrate things they don't like, and they will wear rocks on its body that it used to win tough battles. There is also a theory going around that in the stomach of the Ultra Beast Guzzlord, a Wolverine may reside. Once again, I really enjoyed creating this Pokemon because, like the others, they have great concepts. Here is my first Pokemon. Lucius doesn't have a Patronus, so I'll be using his beliefs as the main focal point. Lucius believes in racial purity of the wizarding world, with a hate for those who are impure, as well as being part of the Death Eaters who share his mindset. So I needed an animal that represents this mentality and aggression to achieve its goals. So I picked the wasp, but I wanted a more interesting body proportion. So I came across a wasp, ironically named the Potter Wasp, which has bulky body parts connected by slender body parts. Now introducing Vespite, the pure blood Pokemon. From Vesp and Spite, a pure dark type with the abilities Swarm and Levitate. Vespite are known for their zero tolerance policy when it comes to differently typed Pokemon. They will only tolerate other Vespite in their own swarm. However, they are sometimes known to work with other pure dark type Pokemon. I like how it turned out. I think it perfectly encapsulates Lucius Malfoy. For my second Pokemon, I'll be basing it off the character Professor Sprout, best known for her role in the second film, teaching students about the Screaming Mandrake group. So I'm going to fuse the two together, as well as add a Aztec death whistle, which sounds like someone screaming when someone blows into it. I'll give it lichen as hair, as well as a horn as a replacement for a witch's hat. A skull motif is added to its stomach with two holes that lead into its hollow body. which it uses for resonating screams. Introducing Azterout, the Mandrake Whistle Pokemon from Aztec, Terra and Sprout, a grass and sound type, with ability, own tempo and new ability, Holodeath, which lowers the accuracy of the foe 2 stages after fainting. Azterout is known for its odd social behaviour, running up to people and Pokemon they like, screaming in their face and running away again. When it comes to people and Pokemon they don't like, however, they whistle a nice song before attacking. This Pokemon has a funny personality and would be great to see in the anime. For my third Pokemon, I'll be basing it off of Professor Umbridge, a woman who seems quite nice at first, but turns out to be evil with severe punishments for her students. She has a love for the colour pink and cats, so that will be the basis of her design. There is a breed of cat with curly fur, and Umbridge is seen wearing some amounts of wool clothing. Umbridge had an odd punishment where students were forced to use a blood quill, which uses the blood of the student as ink to write down what they did wrong multiple times. So I'll also incorporate that into her design. Now introducing Immoral, the punishment Pokemon from Umbridge and Immoral, a psychic and poison type with the abilities Poison Point and Cursed Body. Immoral are harsh Pokemon when it comes to failure. If a fellow Pokemon or trainer fails to win a battle, they carve an insignia into their allies that will start to burn when failure occurs again. Most trainers don't notice this side of Immoral at first, being drawn to its seemingly nice personality. I like its abilities as it reflects how punishing Professor Umbridge is as a person. For my fourth Pokemon, I'll be combining 3 characters together: Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Fenrir Greyback. Lupin and Greyback are werewolves. Lupin became one because Greyback bit him as a child, and Sirius Black can turn into a black hound. Hagrid had a 3-headed dog named Fluffy, so I'll combine all 4 into a Cerberus werewolf hybrid. The first head is Lupin with a neutral expression. The second head is Sirius with a happy expression and some shaggy fur. The third one is Greyback with a grumpy expression and a scar to represent his brutal personality. Now introducing Cerberus, the fluffy Pokemon from Cerberus, Sirius, Fenrir and Brute, a pure fighting type with the abilities Guts and new ability Saliva. When contact is made with the Pokemon, the ability is spread. Cerberus are used as guard dogs to protect people and Pokemon alike, although the heads can be tricked into fighting each other over dominance. This design took me the longest out of all of them, as I found it quite hard to get the proportions right, as I previously wanted it to be a quadruped at first. I think I managed to recover the design though. What do you think? For this Pokemon, I wanted it to be simple and vague so I could expand upon its design 3 different ways. I also wanted to create a Pokemon that looked like a baby, so I gave it a big head as well as adding a baby pink and blue colouring. In this Pokemon line, they will all be criminals, so the first stage will have a balaclava that also looks like it's being swaddled in a blanket. Introducing Babylava, the attention thief Pokemon from Baby, Balaclava and Lava, a pure bug type with the abilities Swarm and Hustle. Babylava are the ultimate attention seekers, going to such lengths to sabotage their trainers' relationships with other Pokemon, so they can be the centre of attention. If it doesn't get its way, however, it will emit cries that break the sound barrier. I enjoyed creating this Pokemon as it strayed away from my usual cool looking Pokemon for a cute looking one. Also enjoyed creating a gender difference by swapping the blue and pink around. It's subtle but it works. Now, for my first Pokemon evolution, it will become a beetle with a mischievous jester motif. It will run on top of a ball as its mode of transport, and will be the other half of the interest for this Pokemon. And I'll finally add an orange and blue colour as they always work well together. Introducing Gestif, the apricorn thief Pokemon from Jester and Thief, a bug and ground type with the abilities Swarm, Ball Fetch and new ability Ball Buster, which prevents Pokemon from escaping battle. Justife are known for plundering apricorn groves and using acid to apply it to the sphere they run about on. The bigger the sphere, the older and more successful a Justife has been in its lifetime. The biggest apricorn sphere on record was the size of a Wailord's head. I think I would have this Pokemon on my team. It has a lot of personality and good stats, so it is a viable pick. Now, for my second Pokemon evolution, I'll be creating a large sumo beetle that extracts the sugar from berries to form the crystals on its body. I'll give it a translucent chamber on its stomach where it will complete this process, and I'll give it a wide stance and a confident facial expression, so it looks like it can fight, and finally a pale yellow will be added as well as a purple to represent what I think a mixture of berries would average out to look like in a juice. Introducing Glucomo, the Berry Thief Pokemon, from Glucose and Sumo, a bug and rock type with the abilities Swarm, Harvest and new ability Sugar Rush, which raises attack and speed when a berry is consumed. Glucomo are notorious for raiding berry orchards en masse to separate the sugars from the berry juice, with their goal to strengthen their defences and mind, with the distillery in their stomach. Glucomo are actually starving, favouring meeting their goals over satisfying their appetite. I also like this Pokemon, but I feel like there's something missing from its design. I might redesign it in the future. Now on to my third and final Pokemon evolution. It's going to be a female crime boss beetle, who is in ultimate command of the swarm. She will have a stern facial expression, as well as eyelashes for antennae. It will have wings made of silk and herbs, and finely coloured purple, green and a light blue. Introducing Divalos, the medicine thief Pokemon, from Diva, Weevil and Boss, a bug flying type with the abilities Swarm, Immunity and new ability Field Medic, which applies the same effect to an ally Pokemon when an item is used on it. Divalos are known to steal medicinal herbs from farms, as well as be in charge of Glucomo and Justife in their own swarms. They hire Livani to tailor silk wings using the medicinal herbs they steal. They will rarely help anyone who is in need of medical attention, if it means sacrificing their herbs. The dynamic these three Pokemon share slots together very well. The bolder personalities of Justife and Glucomo work well under the personality of Divalos. For my first Pokemon, it will be a first stage in a 3-stage line. I'll be creating a Route 1 type bird Pokemon based off of the Magpie. Magpies like shiny things, so it will steal gems that it will wear to show off its vain nature, combined with a thief. A fairly basic design, but that is consistent with other Route 1 designs. Introducing Magief, Thief Pokemon, from Magpie and Thief, a ghost flying type, with the abilities Keen Eye and Frisk. Magief are never seen flying together in flocks amicably, as they'd soon get into a frenzy of stealing each other's gems. So they live a nomadic lifestyle in which they attack trainers in hopes of them dropping something shiny they can wear on their bodies. I really like this design. If it was a official Pokemon, I could imagine it being memed about being part of a cliche Pokemon team. Now, onto its evolution. I'm going to develop its thief attribute into that of a shady dealer. It will still wear gems as it is still vain, but the underside of its wings will act like a coat and contain gems that it will use to deal with other Pokemon for services. I will give its main body a trench coat colouring to to get across its dealer attribute. Now introducing Magila, the Magpie Dealer Pokemon. From Magpie and Dealer, a ghost flying type with the abilities Keen Eye and Frisk. And it evolves from Magief starting at level 21. Magila are known to be the easiest to train out of its line. With its high intelligence, it can mediate conflict between Magief and its final evolution. If Magila doesn't respect their trainers, they will have no issue in trading off their items in exchange for other items or services. I had trouble with the coloration of this one at first because of the way I had it made it look as if it was a secondary school student. So I had to resort to making the main body a beige trenchcoat colour. I think it turned out well. What do you think? Now, for its final evolution, it's going to change a lot from a dealer to a greedy aristocrat. However, in this design, it has become cursed after stealing a certain Pokemon's gems. It will have a Fabergé egg-shaped body, and I also expanded its hairstyle by making it look pompous and colonial-like. Now, introducing Aristocrook, the cursed gem Pokemon. From Aristocrat, Roost, and Crook, a ghost flying type that evolves from Magila when it is in the party with a Sableye, starting from level 40. With the abilities Keen Eye, Frisk, and a new ability called Gem Envy. If another Pokemon on the field is holding a Megastone, its special attack and speed will raise 2 stages. All Aristocrooks are cursed the same, after Magila steals a Sableye's eyes. The curse seems to entail an insatiable appetite for gems, which then forms its crystal carapace. Trainers are warned to never show Aristocrook their reflection, as they will be upset by the geometric asymmetry of its body and go on a week-long rampage. Despite this, they are still sought out after by hunters. The journey of this line is what I like most about this Pokemon, because it's a dark story fitting of a ghost-type Pokemon. Now you would have heard me say that a Sableye's eyes need to be stolen for a Magila to evolve. So for my 4th Pokemon, Sableye will be able to break free of its husk and evolve what it was always meant to be, a fairy spirit that is designed to wear parts of its Pruvo as both a fashion statement and not to be entirely too different from Sableye. I will add a cloud of mist around its body for lore purposes, which I'll explain in its dex entry. Now introducing Sabesprite, the Unleashed Spirit Pokemon, a ghost fairy type and evolves from Sableye starting at level 40, when in a party with Magila, and has the abilities Keen Eye, Fairy Aura and new hidden ability, Trainer's Wish, which allows moves with less than 100 accuracy to hit consistently. Sabesprite are seen dancing proudly in bright meadows and seem to hate the darkness of night. The mist of its body grants wishes in the form of knowledge on how to accomplish your deepest desires. It is discovered that they were persecuted in ancient times and imprisoned in a Sableye body. Scientists are now analysing different Pokemon more closely to find out whether or not they too might be cursed. The concept for my first Pokemon is a didgeridoo who has been possessed by a spirit of a musician. I'll create the spirit in the image of cave paintings found in the outback of Australia, which were created by Aborigines. They sort of look alien-like in a way, so I hope I can convey that in the design. I learned that didgeridoos are actually trees that have been hollowed out by termites and repurposed and shaped into an instrument. So for future lore purposes, I will also be creating a termite Pokemon in the near future. Introducing Didgeridoo, the didgeridoo Pokemon. From Didgeridoo and Spirit, a ghost sound type with the abilities Levitate, Own Tempo and new ability Aero Resonance, which raises speed when hit with a flying type move. Didgeridoo are born when a spirit of a musician comes across a tree hollowed out by Treemite, With their deep resonating sound, they are used by shamans in dream rituals. I like that it has a lot of personality and is a very unique concept. I definitely would add this to my team. Now, onto the 3-stage evolution line. For the basis of this evolution line, I'm starting off with a crocodile, more specifically the saltwater crocodile. I wanted it to look friendly, so you could imagine it being one of the first Pokemon a trainer actually captures on their journey. And finally, I gave it blue colouring to represent its pure water typing. Now, introducing Crocklin, the hatchling Pokemon from Crocodile and Hatchling, a water type with the ability Water Veil, Swift Swim and Strong Jaw. Crocklin are a great Pokemon that helps teach trainers discipline by being classed as having a medium nature. They are found in lagoons and swamps where they can gorge on as much food as possible when nearing evolution. This Pokemon is your classic crocodile, which will give me room to expand upon its great concept in later stages. For its next stage of evolution, I'll be creating a crocodile that is basically comatose, but more specifically hibernating. I'll give it round proportions so it's indicative of a slow metabolism and its hibernation status. When I look at this Pokemon, all I see is a combination between Spike from The Land Before Time and Meatlug from How to Train Your Dragon. Introducing Hyberdile, the hibernation Pokemon from Hibernate and Crocodile, a pure ground type with ability Thick Fat, Swift Swim and Strong Jaw, and they evolve from Crocklin at level 33. Hyberdile have such a slow metabolism they are thought to be immortal. Specimens have been found in their burrows in parts of the region that haven't received rainfall in multiple millennia. Its design is fairly basic, but I think that's representative of its lifestyle. Its next stage, however, is a complete 180. For this last stage, the Pokemon has emerged from its burrow after receiving rainfall. It will have both water and ground typing from its prevos, so it will have both brown and blue colouring. It is a fierce predator Pokemon. To convey this, I've put 2 teeth on either side of its head, as well as flippers and a long tail used for its speed. Introducing Mosafter, the post-Mosasaur Pokemon. From Mosasaur and after, a water and ground type with the abilities Intimidate, Swift Swim and Strong Jaw, and it evolves from Hyberdile via level up during the rain. Mosafter are completely water bound and have the strongest bite force on record. They bring the wet season with them up bone dry waterways, helping Hyberdile evolve into more Mosafter. If you look closely at the last stages, you will notice the similarity with the crocodile line. This is because I like it when we can theorise a Pokemon shares a common ancestor with another. Also, in the shiny of Mosafter, it shares the colour palette of the Feraligatr line. For my first Pokemon, I decided to go with a Spinosaurus, frozen in time by molten glass and obsidian. I made it look as if it was made by a glass blower with round body proportions as well as a big shard of glass for a sail. I wanted to make it look like a baby considering it is basically a fetus piloting a glass body it's encased in. Introducing Spembrio, the glass Pokemon from Spino and Embryo, a rock and ground type with a new ability called Reverb Rage, which raises special attack when it's hit with a sound type move. Spembrio came about when fossilised Pokemon eggs encased in glass were revived by scientists. They are thought to be mutated and not in their original forms. And Spembrio seems to know this, looking eternally sad. Now, onto its evolution. I wanted a design that overcame its hard start in life, as well as be a rival to Tyrantrum. So I made it fierce and imposing, so it's reminiscent of the T-Rex and Spino rivalry we see in Jurassic Park. I also gave it 3 magnificent sails and obsidian plating on parts of its body. Introducing Spectacle, the Mirage Pokemon, from Spino, Apex and Spectacle, a rock and ground type. Spectacle are known to submerge themselves in sand dunes, with their sail protruding to absorb sunlight. However, this can confuse travellers as the light can refract and cause a mirage. For reasons unknown, Spectacle have an on-site rivalry with Tyrantrum, in which both Pokemon will go out of control and fight until one of them has fainted. For my next line of Pokemon, I decided to base it off of the Therizinosaurus, a dinosaur with long nails, used for striking. I didn't want it to just be a plain Therizino, so it will also have attributes of both a Geisha Girl and a ninja. To convey this, I gave it metal florets and feminine eyes. Also, for its ninja side, I added golden-like claw swords and posed it in a Naruto run stance. Introducing Geishadi, the Geisha Pokemon, from Geisha, Shady and Lady, a rock and dark type. Geishadi were not revived through traditional scientific means, but long ago, legends say, a powerful shaman revived them in a dream ritual. Geishadi enjoy serving their trainers, but when they are upset, they will embark on a pranking crusade to make themselves feel better. Now for its evolution, I wanted to accentuate its ninja side more. The metal florets on the Prevo are now shaped like shurikens, and I posed it in another combative stance. It has 3 sword claws on both hands, but I don't want to fully abandon the Geisha influence, so they've become fans. Its limbs will be coloured a light pink, and its eyes a red eyeshadow will be applied. Now introducing Feral Zenja, the Geisha Ninja Pokemon, from Feral, Zen and Ninja, a rock and dark type. Feral Zenja are known for their polar opposite qualities, being the fiercest of battlers, whilst outside of battle they are very peaceful. It is thought long ago that a group from Johto came across Feral Zenja, and were inspired so much by its way of life, they took its qualities back with them to their own region.